welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel Saturday night stream. Gonna just start out with a bit of Geoguessr. Let's just make sure Restream's connected up properly. Yep, excellent. Hold on, let me just... Okay, good. Unplugged the wrong thing. Okay, very nice. We've already got a sign. We've got like several actually. Let me see. Rio Lagarto, San Felipe. ¿Qué más tenemos acá? Mérida. Temax y Mérida. Okay. Well, that's easy. Which is it? 176. Okay, Temax and Mérida. And where is the others? What do we got? Rio Lagarto and San Felipe. La Gran Lucha, Buxots, Santo Domingo. Ah, there's Temax. Okay. That was... absolute piece of piss there. .3 kilometers, 49.86. Not a bad start. And okay, I'm just gonna say right offhand that this feels like we're probably in France. Or Germany. Lange Nacht der Kirchen. Nacht der langen Kirchen. Yeah, we're in Germany. Altkleidersammlung, Metalldosen. Hello, Andromeda. Oh, and thank you. I learned recently that there's a zoom control on the, on OBS. So I can zoom things out of frame that I don't feel like having in frame, which is nice. Oh, let me see. Well, gain's up to the max. Hold on just a second. I'm gonna try turning this down and see if that makes a difference. How's this now? Okay, that is weird. How about now? Is that making a difference? Okay, we are in Germany. Good to see you. How are you doing today? Mask of the Red Death is probably not joining us tonight because she's off at the Labor Notes conference, which maybe when she gets back from that and talk to her about it, find out how it went. Oh no, we're in Vienna. Quadenstraße. 22. Bezirk. Wow. Sleeping most of the day actually sounds rather nice. Trouble is, I still don't really know how the districts work. Never actually properly learned which district goes where, so we're gonna look for some additional clues, because we know we're in the 22nd, Maschelgasse and Quadenstraße, but I'm not sure what part of Vienna that actually is, just that it is Vienna. Alright. Come on, give me something I can actually work. Give me the Prater or something. Prinzgasse. Or a railway station or something. Oh, there's a chocolate museum in Vienna. That's good to know for next time I go there. Itzendorf. Wish the map would actually say which district is which. Okay, let's just keep going. See if we find something recognizable that's near. Or a street I'm actually familiar with. Ziegelhofstraße. I'm just gonna say some place in the Viennese periphery. $12 kilometers. Donaustadt. Okay. 4961 still. Not too bad. Days that you sleep most of can often be quite useful. Okay. Comptoir d'Omaha. Okay, I think. Well, we're in France, and I have a feeling that we are in Normandy. Yeah, right on the seaside here. Is the. I think that's a monument to the D-Day landing. Atlantic Wall Museum. This is still Brittany. Okay. I mean, we know this is definitely. You still with me? My internet connection just died on me for no apparent reason. Phare de Havre. Okay. You still with me? Okay, good. Wasn't sure if it would reconnect to the same link and everything. So we're looking for some place that would have a small seaport with a monument to the D-Day landing. Okay, let me just see if we find something else that gives me a place name. Trouble is, I remember perfectly well the place that they spent months trying to convince the Germans that they were going to be using. Okay, yeah, it is literally Omaha Beach. Which is Calais, where I've been, and Calais, incidentally, kind of sucks. But I don't remember beyond just the region of Normandy. Where exactly it was. Plage de Berck. toi. I think it must be near Le Havre, though. Shit. 81 kilometers. Vierville-sur-Mer. Okay, not too bad, though. 4737. Okay. This looks familiar. Feel like we might be back in the Netherlands. Getting the Netherlands a lot lately. Come on, let's have a street name, shall we? Van de Venterweg. Okay, yeah, we're in the Netherlands. And we're in some, like, residential place in the Netherlands. Which is going to require a little bit of travel before we can figure out anything more about it. Oh, not a whole lot, though. Look at that. Let's see, what have we got here? What we've got is a sign that is not entirely legible just yet. Okay, Wolfheze, Airborne Museum, de Kromme Dissel, Kasteel Doorweert. Doorgaan verkeer, that's through traffic. Renkum. Okay, yeah. I have a feeling I know where this is. Place names feel a little bit Frisian. Burgum. Garaip, Opende. Dokkum. Doorweert, Renkum. Arnhem, Ede, Wolfheze. Arnhem is familiar. Apeldoorn. Fun fact, when you apply dark red liquid lipstick, there will be a brief period in which you look like an absolute fucking ghoul. As I was just discovering while I put on my dark red lipstick just a little bit ago. Especially when some of the dark red lipstick gets on your teeth, and then you just look like a fucking vampire. Okay. Okay, let's see. Bier, Steen, Stockholm, Burgum, Drachten. Doorweert. Moscow, America. There's random names here. Volkum, Eenrum, Warfum, Valum. Let's just say someplace in Westfriesland. Shit. I knew Arnhem was bigger than that. Oh well. Still not terrible. Okay. Okay, I feel like this might be Russia. Okay, still no signs. Come on. Give me a little something here. Okay, we're someplace Portuguese speaking. That says rubbish in Portuguese. Lixo. Now, if we could just get a stop sign. Okay. Looking more and more like Brazil. Now, the thing about Brazil is it is a fucking huge country. It is... You can't just randomly select it and you're guaranteed to be within, you know, a couple of kilometers. You end up... It is very easy to be way off and still be in the right country in Brazil. Yeah, we're in Brazil. Okay. Looks like this is an area where there's some money concentrated. Somebody's selling dough 100 meters up. Cool. House of Chocolate. Okay. Confectionery factory. Oh, come on. You're gonna have to give me a distance sign sometime. Like, how long do you have to drive on this thing before it tells you where you're going? No, it's just the speed limit. Come on. just endless. I mean, it's in one of the greener, I would guess it's in the north. Okay, that's flour. Maybe we'll have a sign soon. Oh, we have. Just to say that the cops are nearby. Okay, we've gone 3 kilometers and still haven't actually gotten a clear indication of where we are. That was the speed limit. Okay, that looks like another sign coming up. Maybe one that actually says... No, it's an ad. But possibly an informative ad. We don't know yet. Oh, the same fucking hotel that we keep on seeing billboards for. Let's say it's somewhere around there. Oh, wow. See? 2,000 kilometers off. Rio Grande do Sul. Okay. We've got all sorts of options. Well, we already did understanding Marxism. That was a laugh. PragerU has Matt Walsh defining woman. I'm sure that will be enlightening as shit. Or a debate panel on Aristocracy's channel on leftism and imperialism featuring fucking Destiny and infrared. Is that Has? Is that the piss guy? Okay, any preferences? Always open for preferences, chat. Okay. Then we will give that one a miss. But, let's see. How about aristocracy with Destiny talking about leftism and imperialism? That'll be rich. It's a long one. If it's any good, we can, like, divide it up over the next few episodes. Okay. And get that audio output volume up.
Stop, never believe them.
Please let me talk.
Infinity.
I'm actually dying.
Oh god, okay. She's actually dying.
And so, without further ado, I'm going to read the rules of the debate. My panel is moderated slightly differently than some other panels on Twitch. There's slightly more rules, so I'm going to read them through right now for the purpose of our panelists and for anyone out there in the audience.
Okay, only people I recognize on here is aristocracy and Destiny. I guess that is not Has, although...
Think I am modding incorrectly or poorly or not following my own rules, please feel free to maul about it and let me know later. The rules are: everyone gets an intro and outro of 90 seconds, uninterrupted for each topic.
Can you guys all hear right now?
After that, we use a list system.
Is it all
So you
good?
can raise your hand, I'll give you a signal, normally a thumbs up, that you're on the list. Once you're on the list, we'll go down the list, crossing off names as we go.
You recognize any of
you
these
can raise your hand
people?
as often as you want, but if you're already on the list, I'm not going to put your name on the list twice.
Oh wait, that is Has. That is Has. That's the piss guy.
It's piss? No!
Yes, okay. There we go. We got the piss guy here.
Gish galloping is really stupid,
this is
and it
gonna be
makes
enlightening
conversations
as fuck.
impossible to have. So, keep your speaking time to under 2 minutes at a time. Aside from intros and outros, I'll give you a signal. I'll do like this little like circle thing on my ear. I'm not calling you crazy. I'm just saying that you have 30 seconds left, and then. So, with that in mind, 90 seconds uninterrupted on the clock.
And guys, my
Lena,
avatar
take it
is
away.
going to be really messed up right now because my computer's just doing so much at once. I need to figure out a better system.
Critical support for parties fighting pragmatic.
Yeah, the pause is the best part. It just, every time I see that, it reminds me of the scene in fucking Sweeney Todd where he's going up to sample the hair tonic and quickly discovers it's piss and tells everybody it's piss, and then everybody's like, hey, this is piss.
And responsibility. I am assuming for this that the person in question lives in the US.
Okay, is that cutting out for you too, or is that just cutting out for me?
Or how much America sort of meddles in that. So for Palestine, it is your responsibility, but for, say, some other locale that isn't as affected by American actions, it's a lot less. But also, you know, there's a bunch of other factors. such as, yeah. I'm done. Sorry.
No problem at all. All right, Spectre.
Yeah, the audio on this is cutting out a little bit, and I think that actually is to do with the video itself.
Right. So I'm just gonna. The short answer is no. We shouldn't support parties, organizations, or anything just because it's opposed to American interest. Sometimes American interests are actually good.
Okay, first of all, what are American interests is the question. I mean, that's just that's a term that sounds like it means something, but it really doesn't. Well, it doesn't mean what it sounds like, because you'd think that American interest means it's somehow all of our interests. And there's a great scene in the movie Missing by Costa Gavras, which is also one of Jack Lemmon's best performances, where he's playing the father. This is based on a true story. The father of this American journalist who is made to disappear by the Chilean junta in 1973 after the U.S. Embassy basically tells them that he's theirs. And he's talking to these pricks in the embassy, and they're talking about, we're representing American interests, your interests. And he goes, they're not mine. And they go, well, there are like 100 different U.S. businesses that are operating out of this embassy. Those are American interests. And it's like, yeah, exactly. That is what they actually fucking mean. I mean, it is ruling class interests. Hola, Yaguara, ¿cómo está?
Sometimes America is trying to do the correct thing in those cases.
Like when? Give us an example. When? First of all, who is this fool? I've never heard of
I
it.
don't think that we should support these people. And even when America isn't necessarily doing the correct thing and the organization itself is bad, engaging in like political extremism, hurting
What the fuck is political extremism?
population in the country that they're claiming to help, using anti-Semitic rhetoric, using any kind of yikesy stuff like that, I think that's enough that, maybe leftists shouldn't be critically supporting those groups.
All right. Thank you, Spectre.
And that is such a useless thing to say, because there's just no fucking examples. I mean, he just sort of says, as if it were something that you could just accept without even thinking about it, that maybe sometimes American interests are on the right side. And of course, when we talk about groups opposing U.S. interests, and we're talking apparently about Palestine, and the word anti-Semitism comes up, the trouble is there is actual anti-Semitism, and then there's the bullshit that gets described as anti-Semitism, because so much of the discourse equates all Jews with the Zionist movement and the Zionist state. And that's bullshit. You can't just... it's like, these are all terms that ought to be seriously interrogated in any debate worthy of the name. But, I mean, with this fucking lineup, there's no way. there's no way that... I don't know, maybe some of these people are... Maybe there's somebody on here who's cool and I just haven't heard of them, but the ones I've heard of, there's no way.
Yeah, the question of should it be like just unequivocal, no limit, no bars, right? Just unlimited critical support for literally any group that opposes like American hegemony and American imperialism. This is
like who? Okay, and who exactly is proposing that? Who is proposing unlimited support for literally any group opposing U.S. imperialism? Like, in any practical way, where is that in actual, an actual fucking discussion?
like obviously no, because the point of supporting a group is that you believe that like if this group is to be victorious in their goals, they would create a situation or an environment.
Yes, but the point of opposing U.S. imperialism is that U.S. imperialism is bad. And the people who are on the sharp end of U.S. imperialism have a right to fight back against that.
Which is more positive than the United States. But there are obviously groups.
It's easy to be more positive than the United States. You don't even have to be doing good things to be more positive than the United States.
Groups that exist, that if they were to get into power, say, for example, like the Taliban, or...
The Taliban and the U.S. have actually been working together more than they've been working against each other.
Boko Haram, these groups, right?
Boko Haram, like, what fucking year is this? This is, okay, July 2021, so, yeah.
While they technically oppose American hegemony and American imperialism in their regions, if they were to get into control, right, with no opposition, they would create a situation in their region which is much worse than American hegemony.
Oh, wait a second. See, it's interesting because what we haven't actually discussed is what U.S. hegemony means in any of these places. Why don't we talk about it a little bit concretely? Why don't we talk about U.S. hegemony in Vietnam, or what U.S. hegemony has looked like in Colombia, or what it looks like for the Kurds right now, or in Iraq or Afghanistan? Why don't we actually talk about what it is we're talking about opposing, rather than just sort of talking about it in the abstract?
All right. Thank you, Charlotte. Destiny?
Yeah, I mean, we should.
Well, we've got Destinies in the house, so, there's some good takes that are just right on the way. He is the good take guy, Destiny, especially when it comes to U.S. imperialism. No finer takes on offer than the ones fucking Destiny's got.
We should have like some foundational set of values that we use to figure out whether we think the actions of some country or some international foreign effort is good or bad, and it should probably be a little bit more fleshed out than are they pro or anti-America. We can think of groups that are opposed to America, that we don't have any ideological similarities to, that we probably wouldn't want to support over America.
Who's we?
And then there are times where we could be critical of American foreign policy, not just because it's American foreign.
Well, wait, okay, see, the whole point is that people have a right to defend themselves against the U.S. So if we're saying that people have the right to defend themselves against the U.S., but if they don't share Destiny's fucking values, then they don't have the right to defend themselves against the U.S. anymore, then that's kind of meaningless. I mean, look, like, just to give an example from a little bit further back in history, some of the people in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising were actual fucking Zionists. They were with Shomer HaTzair. I do not like Zionism. Actually, a lot of the people in the fucking Warsaw Ghetto struggle did not much like Zionism either. But in the context of fighting, for survival against the fucking Nazis, yes, I will back members of Hashomer HaTzair over the fucking SS and the Ukrainian goons that they brought in so that the SS didn't have to get their hands dirty. I mean, it's not a hard one. The thing is, people have a right to defend themselves against this shit.
Foreign policy, but because we can appeal to some like standard that we feel like America isn't living up to in said foreign policy.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and that just, we can appeal to some standard that in said foreign policy, fuck off, Destiny, said foreign policy, what are you writing, a lease? I mean, you've literally not said really anything.
Destiny? Haas.
Oh, this will be interesting.
It's piss? No!
There is no precedent in the history of international law that enshrines or recognizes what's called American imperialism.
Okay. That's an interesting statement. It's actually more cogent than anything I was expecting him to say, but I'm not sure exactly what he means. I mean, recognizes in the sense of legitimizing it. If what he's saying is, and I suspect that maybe he is, he's talking about the fact that the U.S. has absolutely no legal basis in international law to be going around and invading other countries and destroying their economies and all the other wonderful things the U.S. does. But let's listen a little bit further, because I'm pretty sure he will fuck this up eventually. It would be a really fucked up panel if he has the best take on it.
Insofar as America is engaging in imperialist aggression, it is circumventing the established post-war convention nations have agreed to enter into terms with that decides the...
Fucking hell! Okay, Okay, it's that fucking Onion article. The worst person in the room is actually right.
Manner by which nations are going to relate to one another, one of which being the right to national self-determination. So the question is a bit strange because it's like, if America is going to commit a crime and people are going to resist that crime, should those people be supported?
Jesus Christ, what, okay, yeah. Okay, this is a really awkward situation because he's so full of shit on so many things, but he is the least full of shit person that I have heard in this panel yet.
Well, the burden rests on the party committing the original crime to justify itself. I have no obligation to, quote-unquote, rescind support, critical or otherwise, to groups resisting it because American imperialism doesn't have any legitimacy to begin with.
Jesus, yeah, God, this is painful actually. But what he's saying is it's basically what I was just saying. That it's sort of ridiculous to phrase it in terms of what, you know, no es la forma, weón. Hay forma y forma, como un arbolito, weón. You know, oh, there's the nice way to oppose U.S. imperialism and the not nice way to oppose U.S. imperialism, rather than talking about the fucking elephant in the room, which is U.S. imperialism, which is never nice.
So that's my position.
All right, thank you, Haas. All right, so Eris is the last person speaking.
Okay.
So we are going to start allowing the hand raising stuff. So while she's talking, start raising your hand if you want to get on the list, and then we can go from there. So Eris, 90 seconds on the clock. Go ahead. And then Lena, I see you. I'll put you on top of the list.
Wait,
So,
could you ask the question again? Sorry. Because I was a little confused by it.
Oh, no problem at all. All right. So the question is, should the left critically support any group that opposes...
First of all, why is she in a panel about the left? I mean, what's Destiny doing in a panel about what the left should or shouldn't do? Neither of them are on the left. She's a fucking... He stands fucking white nationalist murderers, and she stands a Zionist ethno-state.
Opposes American imperialism / interest, or is there a line to be drawn at ideologies, beliefs, or stated goals of entities such as Hamas, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or the Chinese Communist Party? If so, where are those lines? We can have like a basic talk about general imperialism. If you want to start talking about specific entities, whether it's like Hamas or China or Korea, you're welcome to start doing that. So go ahead.
Okay, the first sentence, can you just repeat the first sentence? You said it really, really quickly.
Fucking hell.
Sorry, Eris. Should the left critically support any group that opposes American imperialism / interests, or is there a line to be drawn at ideologies, beliefs, or stated goals of entities such as Hamas, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or the Chinese Communist Party?
All right, so I'm not American, so I'm not going to tell Americans what to support or not. I mean, it totally depends on everyone's value systems.
Oh, fucking hell. Guess what? That doesn't work in that direction, because the thing about the U.S. is that the U.S. is up in everybody's shit. The U.S. openly claims the right to just rule the world. They call it world leadership. But what they're talking about is they have the biggest guns so that they can just rule the world. So the idea that the rest of the world has no right to have a say in what that looks like has no... that's fucking bullshit.
To me, what makes the most sense is you can support, say, like a group having resistance against something that you consider American imperialism or any other kind of like oppression or something that you're wrong, and still acknowledge that there are severe problems with that group. And at the same time, you don't need to view things in like black and white. So just because the enemy of the...
She famously does not view the Nakba in black and white. She insists on pretending that the jury's still out. The jury came in like nearly 40 years ago.
The enemy is like, it doesn't necessarily make them your...
And if you just listen to the survivors of the Nakba, the jury was never fucking out.
Friend. Someone can replace a bad system with an even worse system, as we saw as a consequence of American imperialism regularly. So it's so that seems like such a childlike view of viewing the world. And I have a feeling that even the people in this room, no one actually subscribes to that. But yeah, I'm interested in hearing people's perspectives.
Thank you, Eris. Again, that's why the second part of the question was where should the line, if it needs to be drawn, should be drawn at in regards to different groups. So right now the list has Lena on it, and then everyone else, if you want to get in, start raising your hand. So Lena, go ahead.
So I'd like to look at the question specifically. This term used was critical support, and I think everyone here is interpreting that as like unconditional support when.
And that's a good point. It does not.
The term itself quite literally contradicts that. It's critical support. It is support with criticism. It's not unconditional. It's not uncritical.
Also, there is a difference between supporting some specific group and opposing the thing that they're defending themselves against. And the thing is, and this is where we utterly fall flat. I mean, I have to say, like, comrades in Russia are actually really kind of showing us the way, and it's kind of pathetic that there hasn't been any reciprocal examples of this, because there's something called revolutionary defeatism, and the basic idea is that all of us try to cause our own respective ruling classes to fail. And if all of us are fighting our own ruling class's war efforts, then the wars can't actually fucking happen. But the thing is, it is critically dependent on all of us doing it, not just in one country, not just in a couple of countries, but in every country that's somehow involved. Okay. Now, so see, when you try to shift the optic over to supporting one group or another, Hamas, the PFLP, whatever, the Workers' Party of Korea, who gives a shit? Doesn't matter. You're missing the point. We have an obligation, really, we have a moral duty to be effectively opposing U.S. imperialism ourselves, and if we were actually doing that, to a greater extent, if we were actually, like, sticking a spanner into the gears of the U.S. imperialist war machine, the way, their comrades doing in Belarus and Russia, for example, then this whole discussion, where it's all purely rhetorical support, I mean, for the most part, it's like, it's not even a discussion of support in any meaningful sense other than just, like, ideologically, yes, I think that's good. Which is not the same thing as, say, real material support where you're sending, humanitarian aid packages to them or, whatever else they might need in order to be able to do what they're trying to do. So, I mean, this whole debate is just already on just a really ridiculous premise.
And in addition, fundamentally, when you support American imperialist actions abroad, regardless of if you think, like, the overall subjective consequences of that are good, you are still legitimizing an act which is in of itself immoral. You're justifying military intervention or economic intervention in a way which gives legitimacy to the idea that America is allowed to just do whatever it wants. So any support of that imperial structure is immoral. It's wrong.
Okay. I'm not sure who this is. The name is so small I can't make it out. But they're talking sense.
No circumstance.
I didn't know their pronouns. They didn't say.
For every group, mind, but there's no circumstances in which American imperialism is, in the long run, good.
All right.
It's not even good in the fucking short run.
Lena, we're gonna go to Haas.
It's piss?
I think we should also pay very specific attention to this word support, because as it happens...
Oh, fucking hell, is he gonna go and just say what I just said again?
There does exist a rules-based international order in which some...
Yeah, okay. It's,
kind of, some kind of common agreement is held between sovereign nations about what rules they're going to be following.
Okay, and the thing about it is, you hear about this most of the time. It's really the most ridiculous thing about all the talk of the rules-based international order is it's coming from people like Tony fucking Blinken, or Madeleine Albright or somebody like that, who has never fucking followed the rules ever. The reality is that what you have is a fairly large number of countries that follow the rules to a greater or lesser extent because they don't have some sort of massive military superiority. And that makes up the bulk of the business of international courts and arbitration tribunals and things like that. And then you have countries like the US and the US's little fucking coterie of bootlickers in Western Europe and Australia and Japan and New Zealand less. Good on them. In Canada, whatever. And since they are on the side of the motherfuckers with the biggest guns on the planet, they've never really given a shit about the rules.
So when we say, should we support them, it's kind of a difficult question, because what does that actually mean?
Although, one thing that is worth noting, when we talk about support in the and we specifically talk about it in the context of international law, it's worth remembering that under international law, peoples and countries struggling against racist and colonial regimes have the right to use force to resist those things and the right to receive support from whoever's offering it. So that does kind of come in, although that's not the sort of support anybody in here is talking about. Maybe Haz will bring it up. We're at a pretty pass when that's the guy that we're hoping to get the reasonably sensible remarks from.
If you mean to say that,
I'll kill you guys if you do say
for
that.
example,
Like, I will actually kill you.
North Korea has
Jump.
no right to
As a
defend
jump,
itself against illegal aggression by America. The question stands as to what kind of international what kind of framework from the perspective of international law are you proposing or coming up? Because what you're
Or are you even acknowledging international law? It's like, because the thing, one of the most remarkable things is how few people have even the slightest idea what international law is and what it says, particularly in the US and, sort of the imperial core, where they've just, they've never used it. It's never actually really been particularly useful. Like the US, the last time the US was subject to the mandatory jurisdiction of any international court was back in 1984. And at the time, the US had created a group of death squads that were murdering huge numbers of people in Nicaragua in order to get rid of the elected government there and restore to whatever extent it was possible the Somoza dictatorship, but without Anastasio Somoza himself. Now, the US had gone as far as mining the ports of Nicaragua to just basically destroy their shipping and prevent them having trade and everything. And so since they do not have remotely equal force, they went to the International Court of Justice, made their case, said this is clearly a violation of numerous treaties, constitutes unlawful use of force, and the International Court of Justice agreed with them, because it was just an absolutely flagrant case. There was no way you could possibly not agree with it. And so the U.S. promptly responded by saying they would no longer recognize the mandatory jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice. And the day they picked to proclaim this was a day that they also proclaimed Law Day, which is what the 1st of May in the U.S. is officially. It's a special country.
What you're in effect proposing is some kind of global government led by America that's going to decide what is or isn't allowed. I know people find many groups.
See, I don't think any of them's thought this through that far.
And countries problematic, but the step from your personal opinion about them to support or not support is something that's going to be arbitrated at the level of something like international law, because otherwise you have no power you have no jurisdiction to exercise authority over them.
See, and the thing is, he's also kind of not talking about what everyone else is talking about, because they're not talking about any kind of meaningful support. They're talking about rhetorical support. They're talking about, yeah, I like what they're doing. People, saying shit like that. Which, I mean, yeah, you can talk about international law in that context, and sometimes it's kind of useful to do so. I think it's less useful than some people think it is, because the reality is that international law itself has a big legitimacy issue, and that it is basically never followed by the countries that have actual power. Sí, lo que pasa, lo que estaba explicando es que el 1 de mayo de 1984 es el día en que Estados Unidos perdió en el Tribunal Mundial de Justicia en un pleito entablado por Nicaragua, y quedaron condenados por el uso ilegítimo de la fuerza en contra de Nicaragua. Y ese día, hubo dos proclamas de parte del gobierno estadounidense, encabezado en ese entonces por Reagan. Y el primero fue que Estados Unidos ya no le hace caso a la Corte Mundial, Corte Internacional de Justicia, por ser un fuero hostil. Y el segundo fue a proclamar que el 1 de mayo iba a ser el Día de la Ley, por celebrar el respeto al Estado de Derecho que representa el régimen que tenemos acá. En el mismo día en que decidieron que, no van a pescar a la Corte Mundial de Justicia, porque la Corte Mundial de Justicia falló en su contra. La falta de ironía es impresionante, ¿verdad?
All right. Thank you, Haas. Right now, no one's on the list. Would anyone like to respond to that?
Exacto. Puah.
Right. So I don't think anybody was confused about the definition of critically support. I think that we all understand that means. I hope we all understand that means like you're supporting a group, but you have criticisms of it. I think that my contention is with a lot of online leftists in particular is they seem to think that you can critically support anything that is opposing American interest, just due to the fact that it opposes American interest.
Ah, sí, es cierto. Y en Chile se celebra el Día Internacional de los Trabajadores, dándole arma a la mafia de Mex. Y luego, el Don Arbolito, ese weoncito, se lava las manos de las víctimas.
Bad. The issue with this is that you end up supporting groups that won't even get the result that they claim that they're wanting. A good example of this would be Hamas, right? This is
going to be interesting, because the thing about Hamas is that they have unilaterally been trying to negotiate with Israel and making peace offers to Israel since about 2009. And Israel has responded to every peace overture made by Hamas by carrying out a huge fucking massacre in Gaza.
Is like an Islamic extremist faction that is mostly using violence to accomplish their ends.
That's bullshit, actually. They're not mostly. When it comes to their ends for dealing with Israel, what they've been doing is diplomacy, and I mean, they've stated that they are willing to accept way more than Palestinians have any obligation to accept in this context. They're basically saying their position is, if Israel moves back into their sort of officially recognized boundaries, and the Palestinians get the occupation ends, then they're kind of cool. And in the context of negotiating out the finer points, they've said they're open to a very extended ceasefire. And the thing about Hamas is that when they agree to a ceasefire, and this, you can go to the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, their website, they got a graph on the symbolic rocket attacks, these warheadless rockets that come out of Gaza, and it confirms that actually when Hamas actually agrees to a ceasefire, they actually abide by it, and Israel does not.
In a situation where, and I mean, leftists should get this, it's the basic, like, master-slave dialectic here. It's not going to get them the results they want. Palestine is going to...
Why don't... see, here's the thing. Without wanting to talk all that much about Hamas specifically, because I don't think... I mean, it's a little bit rich for somebody sitting comfortably up in the, the imperial core to say, to sort of look at, oh, well, I guess we can't really support you because you're not going to get the results that you want. And it's like, well, first of all, who the fuck are you to be saying that? And how the hell would you know? When was the last time that you launched a fucking anti-colonial struggle? How the fuck are you gonna know what's gonna work and what isn't? Somehow, I don't think you'd even recognize an anti-colonial struggle.
Lose that fight if they resort to violence. Better organizations in the area to support would be something like Fatah, if you're really wanting to...
Fatah is literally subcontracting for Israel. In fact, they got voted out in the only free elections the Palestinians have ever been allowed to have. And Israel didn't accept that. And so Mahmoud Abbas, whose term of office ended in 2009, gets to just sit up there and pretend to be president of Israel's Palestinian Authority. I mean, if you know anything... See, I don't know if this guy is ignorant, or whether he is actually malicious in saying this, but Fatah is not resisting Israel. They are literally the cops who stop people resisting Israel in the West Bank.
Just, find a Palestinian party to throw your weight behind. But to be very frank, I think that, the Hamas situation, in addition to, like, even the North Korea and the CPC situation, leftists just kind of see what the discourse is that week. They figure out what the talking points for their particular faction are, and they just, like, figure out how hot of a take they can fire off on Twitter as quickly as possible without actually learning anything about
Oh, well, see, this is... Okay, so this is the nuance, bro.
the topic. So, yeah.
He's very masterfully avoided really taking much of a position of his own.
I guess that would be more...
Except that he feels superior to unspecified online leftists.
what I was expecting to get into here.
All right, thank you, Spectre. We're going to throw it to Lena, then Haas, and then Eris. So go ahead, Lena.
I would like to point to a couple things in that statement. First
Lena.
of all, no individual should ever, as if it's up to any individual outside of Palestine who they support. But regardless, Fatah is a bloating, aging, corrupt organization which has defrauded and oppressed the Palestinian people.
Okay, there is... Okay, she... I'm just going to assume at the moment, since I can't ask. If somebody knows, then correct me if I'm wrong. And if Lena sees this and I get it wrong, I apologize in advance. But Lena's coming with pointing out the actual facts here. I mean, saying that Fatah is something worthy of support or even engaged in any kind of resistance against the occupation is just such bullshit.
It's fundamentally just the party of Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas. He has not allowed elections to go through since the 2006 election because Hamas won. Hamas was elected because it was essentially the only anti-Fatah bloc remaining.
Yes, exactly.
That's where people's support of it came from. Hamas isn't fundamentally this. It's a very broad coalition. You don't see it that way in a lot of English language press. But at this point, it is a broad coalition of everyone who is still committed to that idea of violence. Which, by the way...
Except, okay, that's not quite right, the idea of violence. Because the thing about Hamas is that they've been doing all sorts of diplomatic stuff all the way since, since 2009, right before the caste-led massacre, which was the most horrible thing that a lot of people had ever seen until then they the subsequent ones, each one seemed to have gotten worse. But I mean, the immediate prelude to that was Hamas saying that they would be open to a 10-year ceasefire with Israel and peace on basically on the terms of the 67 borders.
Why are Palestinians are the people who initiated the violence? And it's not up to us whether or not to continue using it. The Israeli state perpetrates violence, violates international law on a regular basis.
Yes, all true.
In many respects, and refuses to acknowledge this, and refuses to quit its own use of violence. So why should the Palestinians lay down arms at all?
Yeah, I mean, the Palestinians do have a right to defend themselves, and it's really rich for people in fucking air-conditioned, streaming studio rooms or whatever the fuck they're, bedrooms, whatever, miles away from any of it, talking about, oh, they should just lay down their arms. Well, when they lay down their arms, they get fucking massacred. Israel fucking murders them regardless. Israel doesn't give a fuck, because what Israel wants is no fucking Palestinians on the land that they've decided they want to take over.
They have the right to resist under international law. They have the right
True.
to resist a foreign occupation.
All right, thank you, Lena. We're gonna throw it to
Oh, let's see what fucking aristocracy Zionist ass does with that.
Haas, and then Eris, and then Spectre. I see you. You're welcome as well. All right, Haas, go ahead.
I'm detecting a great deal of confusion on Spectre's part about the actual substance of the argument at hand. I know
Spectre is the dickhead who thought Fatah was a good idea.
one's actually interested in his personal opinion about the supposed viability or unviability of Hamas. Actually,
Okay, once again, yes.
that was a decision down to the Palestinian people themselves within Gaza, who actually elected Hamas. I'm sure Spectre envisions himself as the emperor of the globe, where his
Oh, Jesus Christ! You stop making sense, Haas.
personal opinions will exercise
You're pulling in Eris here.
some kind of impact on how people are supposed to live and who's supposed to rule over them. But the fact of the matter is that that's just not the case. We have a current rules-based framework for the
Okay, see, he keeps on coming back to that. Yes, the thing is that, yeah, the rules are there. You can read them. Some countries even follow them. The countries that can't get away with not following them anyway. But the trouble with the international law framework, and actually in the case of Palestine, is a particularly good example. Because the international legal framework around Palestine was largely drawn up on their backs. They didn't have any fucking say in any of it. They didn't have any say in the 67 borders. They didn't have any say in the 48 borders. They didn't have any say in the idea that a Zionist colony should be set up on their land in the first place. So, but international law does say that part is, you just have to accept it as it is. But the Palestinians have every fucking right not to. But you can't rely on international law for that, because the thing about international law, I mean, you can't really put so much stock in it, because at the end of the day, what it is deals worked out by the ruling classes of the most powerful countries. That's all it is. Because they think something is currently in their interest, or because they think it's in their interest currently to appear to support something, even though maybe they don't actually. Which is why the U.S. has signed all sorts of human rights shit that they've never implemented in the U.S. and that they violate internationally all the time.
the way in which countries and nations will establish the extent of their relations and common observance of rules with regard to one another. And the questions which is open, which stands, is this: how are you going to replace that? How are you going to establish some kind of...
You see, how are you going to replace that implies that it's actually in place at the moment anyway. And the thing is, thanks largely to U.S. imperialism, it really isn't. I mean, yes, you have the relations between countries like, say between El Salvador and Honduras or whatever, where you have like roughly equal power. Nobody's has overwhelming force on their side, and so if there are any disputes over anything, they work them out legally for the most part. You know, And when a country like Nicaragua has issues, illegal issues with the U.S., obviously they can't deal with that shit militarily because they would be destroyed. Everybody knows that. So the only option is like a legal option or some sort of international solidarity arrangement where they're not alone in facing the U.S. But the idea, I mean, he puts a lot more stock. I mean, and we'll talk. I mean, the fact that this sovereign nations shit. I mean, which also is an issue because it kind of you can taste the Caleb Maupin scent coming off of him.
Global police force, which is going to be the organ of your personal views about who you prefer or who you consider is viable or who you consider quote unquote yikesy or woke. That's the question here, and it seems Spectre hasn't
Okay, he's using woke as a pejorative. Yeah, of course.
actually answered it.
Spectre, would you like to respond, answer it since you were directly?
I would be absolutely shocked if any of the people in this panel ever used woke as a positive in the first place.
Added, and then we're gonna go to Eris.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be emperor of the globe and like say that we're gonna take the military and enforce our will in every like sovereign state on the planet. I'm simply
Well, that's good because you haven't got one.
saying that like critical support for organizations like Hamas, the CPC, the DPRK, they get the left fucking nowhere except like in like fucking fail.
Okay, who's the left? And what do you mean they get them nowhere? That implies that there's some sort of objective that that these things somehow stand in the way of, and maybe that is the case. But if you're going to be saying that, you've got to actually say what the objective is, why you think it's getting in the way.
Compilations where we look like absolute morons. And as far as I can tell, like the online left has basically become nothing but like a bludgeoning stick for the right and centrists to beat people with politics to the left of liberalism with, because they look stupid when they do this shit.
As opposed to you, who look absolutely brilliant talking about Fatah as the voice of resistance to Zionist colonization now and not in like 1975.
Haas, you're welcome directly to respond, and then we're gonna go to Eris.
Sure, yes. I also think you're a little bit confused about the topic and subject matter at hand, because the question is revolving around critical or otherwise support for groups resisting American imperialism. It isn't actually about your personal problems with the
three groups that I mentioned were directly
shut up, don't interrupt me. Shut up, don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. Anyway,
I interrupted all of you, and I'm going to continue doing it. And there's nothing you motherfuckers can do about it because you're pre-recorded.
The question revolves not around the strategy for what looks best for the left in America. We can talk about that, but it seems like that's a completely different topic.
And also, and here's the thing, when you start getting into optics, the problem with what looks good in the U.S. is that what looks good is very much shaped by propaganda that is designed to make things that are absolutely atrocious, detestable, look good. Now, the only way that any kind of revolutionary movement is going to make any headway there is to challenge these notions about what looks good and point out what actually is behind that supposedly positive facade. But in order to do that, you have to actually take positions that are going to require some explaining. If you say, actually any country under threat from the U.S. probably would not be making a huge mistake to get nuclear weapons because look at what happened to Iraq. I mean, a lot of people will fucking gasp. But the thing is, look at what happened to Iraq. They made the point of showing how completely defenseless they were, and the U.S. response was to invade them. And in fact, if the U.S. had any inkling of a suspicion that there actually were weapons of mass destruction, there's no way they would have invaded because the U.S. doesn't want that kind of shit. They don't want that kind of counterattack. That's why they're useful to have if you're a country on the Washington shit list. Now, all of that sounds really ugly because, every country that is in the U.S. crosshairs is totally fucking demonized. I mean, and none more than the DPRK. And so, if you're going to say, yeah, they have every right not to be overrun by the U.S., even if it makes people at home in the U.S. a bit uncomfortable. Well, they do, because the thing is, no matter how bad, no matter what you might think of the way that North Korea is run, and I'm not exactly a fan of how it's run, though there's some things that they seem to be doing quite well, I have to say. There are things that I agree with. This isn't the time to talk about it, but you know what would be worse than that? North Korea being just a bunch of fucking rubble and a bunch of fucking dead motherfuckers. Which is what places turn out to be when the U.S. gets done humanitarianly intervening in them.
All right, we're gonna go to Eris, and then right now we have Eris, Spectre.
It's like, I mean, it's like having to have some sort of ideological test of purity to decide whether you are more on the side of Alderaan or the fucking Death Star. Like, yeah, okay, I mean, I don't want to reflectively be against the Death Star. I mean, that's just so online left to be reflexively against the use of the Death Star. And after all, Alderaan, I mean, you can't. They're not great either, are they? So maybe we can find a medium. Maybe we need to find a middle way. Maybe the Death Star should destroy half of Alderaan.
Back to Haas, and then Destiny. So, Eris, go ahead.
Okay, and with that, it is 1 a.m., so it is time for me to wrap up for tonight. Thank you so much, tantas gracias por venir. No hemos tenido tantas personas como siempre, porque una está en una conferencia, otra está un poco cansada, y bueno, el verano al final, bueno, en algunas partes de Chile, ¿no? Así que ahora me voy despidiendo de todo el mundo y nos veremos como mínimo el viernes y a lo mejor en otro día intermedio. Y por si acaso también te menciono que también tengo otro canal que se llama Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. Solo Hyperpolyglotting en Twitch y with Elise en YouTube. Y también voy a estar transmitiendo por ese medio, así que me encantaría verlos allá también. Chaucito, buenas noches.